Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Obscuria Filmcast, where I can't speak and we talk about weird movies. Today, Seth Michael May is presenting The Swimmer. Take it away, Seth.
Okay, so today we're doing 1968, The Swimmer, starring Burt Lancaster. And when you talk about The Swimmer, will you talk about yourself? That's what we're going to find out today, because that's what the posters for The Swimmer said. So that tells you how they didn't know how to sell this movie, probably.
And the trailer.
And tell us a little bit about the backstory of your father in this movie and how
Okay, so this movie, I believe I saw for the first time 13 years ago, because my dad had died, and I wondered, he had always told me his favorite movie was this movie that Burt Lancaster was in, where he swam in other people's pools. That was his plot summary of The Swimmer. So after he died 13 years ago, I decided to see The Swimmer. I was like, this is not just about, I thought it was about a guy who gets up in the morning and he goes and swims in the neighbor's pool.
Wait, is that all he told you about it, or did he have something else to say? Okay,
that was his analysis.
Didn't he have some deep takeaway about why it was his favorite movie?
Yeah, because he swam in other people's pools.
And that's why he liked it.
And my father loved to swim. Okay. My father just loved to swim everywhere we went. And my father was a lifeguard, and my sister was a lifeguard because my father was a lifeguard. He was just very into swimming. And I guess if you're on another planet, you think that this movie could be about a guy who swims in other people's pools, if you don't understand subtext or theme. And I guess maybe he didn't. Because The Swimmer, okay, so this is like an introduction to the fall of the studio system. And a lot of older actors, he wasn't even that old, but he was probably in his, how old do you think Burt Lancaster is here?
He's in his mid-50s. He's in his mid-50s. I have it right here. I can tell you exactly.
He looks good for his mid-50s.
What?
He looks good for his
he looks good, especially for that period of time.
I mean, Burt Lancaster was a huge star, and just like in...
he was 55, because that was 55. He was born in 1913.
Okay. And he won Best Actor 8 years prior to this movie, so that was probably...
From what? From Here to Eternity?
No, Elmer Gantry.
Elmer Gantry.
1960.
Okay. So he played all these really epic cowboys and super heroic masculine dudes, and then 1967, 68, 69 comes around, and everybody had to start to reinvent themselves. Like guys like Charlton Heston started, getting chased around by monkeys and did Planet of the Apes. They left Ben-Hur, that whole universe, in 54. And then some guys, which is the whole point of who were younger, which is the whole point of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, they just couldn't survive. They couldn't make the jump to movies, and TV didn't want them, and they just sort of dissolved. So this movie is the same year as The Graduate, and it's the beginning of the anti-hero movement in film. And
it's kind of has a lot of overlapping themes with The Graduate. I mean, even stylistically.
Stylistically, yeah, it's very similar to.
But also, the characters and the dialogue and the whole yuppie, making fun of yuppies thing.
And I mean, it's a really good companion piece to Mad Men. It's the same time period. I think they make little references that he might have been an ad exec. They never tell you exactly what he was, but they say they can get him on a different firm, and there's some really creative guys there, but he'd have to take a pay cut. And he's like, what, pay cut? But basically, when we're introduced to Burt Lancaster's character, Nettie, he's swimming in someone's pool. And the first shot we see of Nettie, when we see his close-up, is a drink being lowered to him. And that's one of many drinks that he will have.
Wait, hold on. I think this is an important point. You're a little mistaken there. The first shot was him running through the woods.
Oh, the first shot is him running through the woods?
No, the first shot of him is of him running through the woods. But the first shots of the film are these really weird nature shots with
nature shots, these Disney-esque nature shots of owls and rabbits and the woods. Those are the first shots. But the first close-up of his face is a drink being lowered into the frame.
It was cool how they did it. Let me get a prop. They did it like this.
Yeah, it's lowered by
And then
somebody
his
else's
face
hand.
comes up like that.
Yeah. And that's the first of many drinks that Nettie will be having in this.
I have a small question. Where was he running? Where was he running from?
Okay, so we never know. These are my theories. He's either gotten out of a sanitarium where he's been gone for a while, or he's been away somewhere in denial about what's happened in his former life. We don't know, but everyone else, yeah.
I'm only asking because he didn't wear clothes the entire movie. So where was he before this? But that's my first quick question. But go ahead, Seth. You were explaining the
It's never
thing, just for the audience. He never wore clothes the entire movie.
No.
Go ahead.
No.
Well, it takes place in one day, apparently. And
If it is one day, because the seasons change radically in that day.
they do, but they start off with the conversation of, he says, and he lays out the whole film. I'm going to swim from this pool to this pool to this pool to this pool to my house.
All the way home.
Which usually doesn't mean, when I say I'm going home and I tell you how, I'm usually not talking about a year from now. I'm usually saying today, maybe into tomorrow, but that's it. So at least that's how they set it up. Yes, the seasons do change and time is not.
It's ambiguous.
The right word.
The whole thing is ambiguous. So I think it's kind of cool that it's layers of symbolism, but I did not like this movie at all. But please, Seth, I dare you to say what happens in this movie. I really want to know.
You find out who Ned is and what his life's perception was, and the truth is far from what he seems to be holding on to in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he was probably once very successful, or at least he thought himself someone who kept up with the Joneses, and it's remained that way. He says something to the little boy. He says, if you hold on to something and you believe it, it's true, no matter what anybody else says. And that's basically what happens for the whole movie. Is like, they're like Julie, the babysitter, his former babysitter, says, well, your daughters don't need a babysitter anymore. They're grown. And he ignores that.
Not even that. He books her for an appointment. Come over Sunday.
Yeah.
You'll see the girls on Sunday. Come on over.
Yeah. So I think there's a level of he's off. He's not well. He's
not off. I thought it opens up, he's swimming in this pool, and tonight's the night Sarah and I usually watch The Sopranos, and I forgot we had to watch this, and so we watched this instead, and Sarah is now mad at me because I made her watch this movie instead of The Sopranos. But I just thought there's a lot of symbolism there. But if your whole movie is just symbolism and signifiers that links to a significance that's different in every viewer, it's not, there's a fine line there, because to me, it kind of doesn't mean anything about anything. It's just, it's like a coloring book. I gotta I gotta paint in everything. It's like, I gotta write a little one-page essay about who this guy is, where he's from, all this stuff to make the movie complete. And he doesn't wear clothes, and he races a horse in the movie. I expect there to be a laugh track when I say he races a horse. Then he forces this blonde girl who was his babysitter, Julie, along with him on the ride.
He doesn't force
Not only that,
he doesn't force her.
He doesn't force her.
Oh, come
he likes the
on,
idea,
man.
and she comes along with it.
After like 2 minutes of come on.
If you think she was forced or coerced
Sean,
in any way.
Okay.
Have you ever seduced a woman in your life?
That's not begging is not seducing.
You didn't
'Cause he
beg
was
her.
begging.
That's ridiculous.
All
It's
right.
ridiculous. You're misremembering, and you just watched it today.
He just watched
Yeah.
I
it.
did. I just saw it. Yeah.
Listen, it's a
fresh.
very simple movie. It's a man.
I know, but
It's a man who clearly it's very obvious early on in the film that this is a man who's having a midlife crisis, but it's like a soft kind of gentle midlife crisis. And as it goes on, it's like that Vice thing where things keep getting more and more tense, and you're more asking what's really going on here. Then you find out at the end that this midlife crisis that he's having is way worse than you could have ever imagined, and that's the whole movie. That's it.
I do.
In a
I
nutshell.
do. I do.
I don't
No, I
see
do
what's so
agree with you.
complicated about that. It's very simple. It's
Well,
beautiful.
yeah, no, I get it. But I do agree with you. They really did that midlife crisis crescendo very well.
Yeah.
They did, because he was like Mr. Lovey-Dovey in the beginning, and in the end, it's like, what's this naked guy doing on my lawn?
And it goes from people enthusiastic because they haven't seen him in a while, like the first pool. It's like, wow. And the first few, it's like, oh, this guy's cool. Everybody loves him. To like somewhat neutral at a certain point, and then it just devolves into like really bad interactions that get worse and worse, and until they end up being hostile.
It also
like,
goes down in that same trajectory. It goes down in socioeconomic status. So it seems like the wealthier pools are either more oblivious to it and they play along, and the people who are like own the bar and have to go to the chlorinated pool can see the truth. So I don't know which is which, but it
Yeah.
does. It's on the same slope, so it could mean.
Yeah, that's an
Look at it
interesting
both ways.
observation.
That's a good point too. I didn't notice that too, because
Yeah,
Yeah, he was
by the
drinking.
time you get to the over-chlorinated public pool, it might as well be hell. By
Yeah,
the time he has to walk across the street, and then I've always hated like when you go to a public pool and they're like really bitchy about you taking a shower and then washing your feet, and they make a real point of how unpleasant a suburban public pool can be. And all the other pools before that have been like, you know,
Have a
they've
drink.
been- yeah, you can
Have a
drink
drink.
it. Yeah.
yeah, I just think that no, I did not notice that. Yeah, I guess that was kind of cool. I was just so mesmerized by Burt Lancaster because I haven't seen him much. I saw him in From Here to Eternity and Field of Dreams. But he has a, I guess he's a good looking man still in his mid 50s. But to me, it was like the midpoint of the film was that Juliana, they're in the woods and she's talking about how much as a child she had a crush on him. And then it got to a point where they're laying in the woods and he makes a move at her and she's like, no. And then he's like, tries to pull her in and then she runs away. And then after that, it was just like, it built up to that. It just was kind of really cringy.
That's not what
For
happened.
me.
That's not what happened.
No? Okay.
No. He never tried to kiss her. I mean, he never really made a move. He just started talking in a cringy romantic way. Like, I won't let these guys bother you. I'm going to take you to lunch every day and we're going to spend time together. And then she's like, well, I don't think my boyfriend would like that. And then he kept kind of escalating it.
Yeah.
But it was all verbal and it was weird. I agree with you. It was kind of poorly calibrated on his part. He was, he probably could have.
I was
but
embarrassed.
yeah, but hold on. She had a whole monologue about her love for like this old man as the babysitter, which I thought
Yeah.
was kind of cringy
Well,
because it's
Yeah.
like
but that's what
I
Oh,
love
it's shirt.
babysitter.
But
It's
that's
like,
why I thought it was like, I thought her response to him was rather incongruent. I would have
Yes.
expected after that kind of confession that she would have been completely ready for him to escalate physically with her.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Especially why would she tell him that now that she's like 20 years old? Like, why would you say that if you weren't like, that's usually.
I think she says it because she feels she can. Because they're both adults now and there's nothing going on between them and it's been a long time since they've seen each other and she feels she can say that. And then she goes on to talk about how she's like, and this tells you how much things have changed. they're dating. She met her boyfriend with a computer, and that he acts like that's like from Mars or something. Like it's the most horrible, like unromantic, cold thing, you know, you could possibly do. So I think that like, I think that she feels like she's an adult and she can talk like this, and he's just not at all hip to this new generation.
I could see that. It's just I got the narration here for the book, and it says for the character, Ned is a delusioned man who lives in a twisted reality that was born out of his repression of the truth. His youth slowly seems to face away and show that he is actually much older and facing midlife crisis, and the life he thought he had has all slipped away, including his wealth, friends, and family. It was just so
It's based off a short story. It's not based off a book. It's one short story.
Yeah, because
It's 12
Sarah and I
pages
were like, how
story.
long is this book? Because
It's 12 pages.
It's a
Is it?
12-page story.
It says 12 pages.
I think it would be better if it was that kind of a movie, because we're in these places. It was cool to see Joan Rivers. But
That's
to
Joan
me,
Rivers' first movie part ever.
Mm-hmm.
was
And
it?
yeah,
And her
if
name was
you-
Joan.
There is a yeah, that's Joan Rivers' real face, and she was friends with the director. It's the director's second movie. There was a huge conflict, and this happened also on the movie Atlantic City with Burt Lancaster. He was very hard on directors because he produced a lot of his own stuff, and this movie wouldn't have gotten made without Burt Lancaster's star quality. So they rehearsed it with the director. She was very nervous. And when the director left, Burt Lancaster said to her, "Now I'm going to tell you how we're really going to do it." So he's moving her around. And if you watch the scene, she talks about it in a clip from a documentary called The Story of the Swimmer, which I think is only available on the Blu-ray. I don't know if it's available on the DVD, but parts of it you can watch on Vimeo. And then evidently at the end of the day, the director said to her, "I see what that son of a bitch is doing. Do it the way I told you." So that sounds like a nightmare situation for any actor, let alone if it's your first time acting with a big star and you're friends with the director.
You can
And his
tell that Burt Lancaster was kind of manipulating the direction of the film, because the things that he did, I mean, if you watch him, he's really he's doing all these really seductive things with his acting. I don't even just mean like sexually seductive. I mean seductive to like the actors that he's working with, and seductive to the audience. And I think one thing in particular that I wanted to mention that really stood out to me was that after he kind of hurt himself when he was jumping around with the girl.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Are you okay?" And like that was pretty poignant, because that was like a really nice like way of describing the juxtaposition in age, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that he did that really impressed me was what happened to Sean?
We lost. Oh, he's back.
There he is. Okay. The thing that really impressed me was that he started limping, and very subtly after that, and then throughout the film, and the limp got gradually worse and worse as the rest of the film moved on. So it was like that's almost kind of like the midway point, and it's almost like that's like act 2, which is like his full-on deterioration on display.
So the story about
that
the
limping
limp
thing he did is really amazing. I couldn't.
Yeah, there's a story behind the limp. That's his real limp. And as he was getting more and more tired, because you have to realize, Tom Cruise talks about this in his own performances, although he's way more egotistical about it, is when you do a movie and you're in a pool, you're not like in a pool, like swimming like one lap and then you're done for the day. You're swimming like 50 laps, like every take. You know, if it doesn't work, or there's a hair on the lens or something, or water gets on the lens, you have to do that take again. And usually it's not. So he's swimming tons and tons of laps. So he started to get tired and he had a limp. So they wrote that limp into the movie because he couldn't control it anymore. This previous.
Well, it seems like the timing was too perfect for that to be like completely true, meaning that if you think about all of the cuts and edits in this film, like he literally does not limp until the precise moment in the film where he would start limping, and then the
No, but
limping.
they wrote the fall in. The fall is not in the original script.
Okay, I believe that,
Mm.
but
And they
So
probably shot.
oh,
it in
so
order.
he was getting so tired at that point. They're like, all right, we'll just have you fall, and then you can do this limp. But the limp got worse. Through
I
like,
think the
he
limp
made
got
it worse. I
as
mean,
he's getting progressively more tired. And I think the other thing that is
yeah,
interesting
but
about
those
this
other
film is,
scenes were shot over many, many, many days, probably.
yeah, but they
It
would
was
have known
shot
that
in
he was.
order.
They would
shot
have been
it.
known that he was getting tired anyway, and
Yeah.
that the limp would have come because Burt Lancaster hired a swimming coach because he couldn't swim before this movie at all, and he didn't want to embarrass
Oh yeah, that's
himself
right.
in front of people with aquatics. So he must have known as he was getting tired to tell the writers, it's like, look, we're gonna have to write something in for my limp because because he spent 4 to 5 months training as a swimmer with the Olympic coach of water polo
That's
at
amazing.
UCLA.
That little glitch, like the fact that he had that. I mean, that makes the movie so much more interesting.
He was in shape too. He did look really good. I mean, for 55 especially.
Yeah.
But they
By
probably shot
1960
that.
standards, for sure.
Yeah, but they probably shot that movie in order of the movie. They probably shot it in sequence.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
They did that stuff back. They did that.
If
back
you're
then.
shooting outdoors and the leaves are actually changing color and you want that, unless you're going to paint leaves and you have that in the budget, you have to kind of shoot in order. I don't know if they did or not.
I mean, this
But
was
another
this,
thing that he, speaking about his control, he brought in Sidney Pollack to redirect the scene with his, the woman he had the affair with. That's Sidney Pollack directed that scene. He was brought in, they knew each other because he had directed, Sidney Pollack was a child acting coach at the time and had directed little bits of stuff around it. Maybe he was on the set for the kid. I don't know, but anyway, they basically reshot that whole scene the way Burt wanted it.
I didn't like how that scene was directed. I remember
Why not?
watching it
why not?
because it's a long scene and that's just difficult to. It's like 10 pages. That's just difficult to direct anyway. 2 people for 10 pages. It is. And I guess if Sidney Pollack, who wound up being a great director, he wasn't in 1968 because the scenes were just here, and then we went here, and then we went here, and then we went here without any progression in the scene,
There's no
visually
progression
or
in that scene?
otherwise.
There's tons of
Well, no,
progression in that scene.
tons
There's,
of amounts of
there's
progression.
one
Yeah,
one revelation after another.
Whoa. Let me finish. Thank you. There was no progression in the scene visually or otherwise that actually demonstrated their relationship. That was my sentence. Thank you.
Give me a break.
Wait, there's no, he says, can I do your back? Then she lets him do her back, even though she doesn't.
He asked her 7 times.
So what?
That's 6.
Sorry, I messed it up. But
15 times.
Yeah.
All right. The whole point is that these are little vignettes that take place at a poolside. What do you want them to do?
I want to see the progression of their relationship.
They totally
Either
did
like
that.
There is so much.
only
there's
through
so much-
through the dialogue.
So what?
Only through the dialogue.
and that's not even true. But even if that were true, who
And he's
cares?
screaming at the end of it, she loved it, she loved it. That's not a progression. It is
There's so
emotional.
much escalation in that scene. It escalates from one thing to the next thing to the next thing, and so finally she's like, "Go fucking swim the length of the pool and get the fuck out of here." Basically,
I don't see it. It was just
I just
sit
didn't
here
like
and then
the
sit
scene.
there and then sit there. And then yeah, I guess it ended in the pool, but then he's
you didn't even know what their
"You loved it."
relationship is in the beginning,
It-
and then
I
you
know, but
find out that,
that's-
and then you think like, "Oh, they had a fling," and he's like, you don't know if she's like annoyed with him because she's just like, that's the past and it's over, and he's just like bothering her, or that and then you find out that she was like crazy about him and he kept stringing her along, and like it built up pretty well. I don't see what the problem is with that, and it also
I just
keys you
wish-
in on some very important information about this guy's situation and how he got to the point where he's at now. It shows you some of his behaviors that are really relevant to the plot. I mean, like, I don't
Yeah.
understand.
Okay, well, I just wish I saw their relationship visually, I don't know, more or something. I didn't get it. I didn't like, okay, it just seemed like just move here, move there, and move there.
I think, you know what, when I saw the movie, I was like a little bit like confused, and like I think the fact that you just saw this movie right before the podcast is like definitely impacting your, like, I have this movie got caught in my head, and like, and it got like after the day after I saw it, I was like, and I think back on it, I was like, wow, that was interesting. And then the next day I was like, whoa, that was really interesting. Now I don't know if you and Judy agree uh, about that, but I think this is one of those films that, like, it bears like a little bit more, like, I don't know, I think it deserves a little bit more respect than you're giving.
Okay, I understand. I understand because
Late Gilbert Godfrey is one of his favorite films.
what?
Yep.
I mean, this is a masterful film in a lot of ways. I get if you don't like it, you
Yeah.
can not like it, but if you can't recognize that there's just something really special about this film, like,
Yeah, I think I'm gonna chime in for a second.
yeah, I want to hear what you.
I liked the simplicity of it, but I will say that I watched, I think, the first half with my husband, and we were like, this movie is terrible. It was like hard to get through. It was slow.
Slow.
This was our experience. The first half, we were like, okay, like there were some points where like, oh, that's fun, the party, yeah, okay. Oh, it's pretty, the woods, but it was just like dragging on and on. I had to watch, I think one of my kids woke up, so I had to watch the rest of the movie the following night. And then that's when I really liked the movie. Then I remember when he asked me about it, I said, actually, that piece of crap that we were watching last night actually turned out to be a really enjoyable film with, I think, a deep meaning to it. And I do give them credit for taking kind of a simple story and loading a lot to it in a very subtle way. I don't think the movie is for everybody. I also kind of liked, in a creepy way, how it was kind of like Disney-esque with the woods and the sort of jovialness to it, and like the young
music-
girl.
the
So they
music.
sort of, it's a little
Okay.
twisted in that sense, but then
The
I like
music
how
was Disney.
The
yeah.
music was spectacular.
it was just,
This is one of
yeah.
the greatest film composers of all time. I don't know how much you guys follow this stuff, but Marvin Hamlisch. I mean, this
Mm.
guy,
It's his
and this was his
first
first
score.
film. And so like, let me take a moment now to tell you all of the films that this guy has scored. Can I do that real quick?
Yep.
Yes, please.
Where are we at? Work.
Now, I'll just say this in the duration. The next year, Midnight Cowboy came out. Midnight Cowboy has the greatest experimental cinema in the movie. They do very artsy fartsy things in that movie.
Yeah.
And they try to do it here, and it just didn't work. I didn't like the slow motion, and I didn't like the double-matic between the chick and the trees.
It's
and all
because
that
you're a
other
city boy
stuff.
now, Sean. You grew up in the country and now you're in the city. And this is a Westchester movie, not a New York City movie. You know?
That's a good. It
Okay,
was
so
Westchester. You're right.
The next
Okay.
film that he did after The Swimmer, Marvin Hamlisch, was Take the Money and Run, Woody Allen. I'll name some. He did Bananas. He did The War Between Men and Women, The Way We Were, The Sting.
That was a big
Spy-
hit.
He did The Spy Who Loved Me.
I think he won an Academy Award for The Sting. too.
Was it for The Sting? Yeah. He
Yeah.
did Ordinary People. He
Nice.
did,
That's my
he
favorite
did
film.
Sophie's Choice.
Mm.
He did a 1984 Streetcar Named Desire, which I didn't know about that. He did Little
Okay.
Nikita. He did.
I like that movie. I
well,
want to
you-
give that movie a
You do or you
rewatch,
don't,
actually.
because that was critically.
I do.
panned.
I want to watch it. I want to watch it again. That and Running on Empty. I want to
Yeah.
do 2 river films.
Yeah, he did some interesting stuff. He did Missing Pieces, Frankie and Johnny. How to lose.
Johnny.
He did How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. This is towards the end.
Nice.
He did The
That's where he
Informant.
cashed in.
He did The Informant with Matt Damon.
Matt Damon.
That was
That was a good, and Soderbergh, I think.
yeah. So I mean,
Some of
this guy was like, you could see from this film, as schmaltzy as the music was, it worked. I think it made it weirder. It's like it created like a cool juxtaposition,
Mhm.
and I think that, like, I think people when they heard the music in this film, they were like, that's his first time. I mean, this guy, they could tell this guy was going places, and he did. So
Mm.
shout out to him. Rest
Yeah.
in peace, Marvin Hamlisch.
Marvin Hamlisch, Academy Award winner, Marvin Hamlisch.
Yeah. The last thing I want to comment on with the film is that I really liked the flow of his character and how they portrayed him, because in the movie you're sort of like, I would say I'm kind of like indifferent to him, to Nettie. It's like, okay, everybody likes him, but do they? I don't know. And then as it goes on, you learn about the truth of him and how he's sort of living a lie. You're like, I don't really like him anymore. And then by the ending, I now feel bad for him. And I like him again in a weird way. So I kind of liked how they portrayed that, because yes, it's an anti-hero, but it's, I don't think he means to be. So I like that.
Yeah. I mean, he's kind of like full on in complete delusion, which you don't find out until the very end.
Yeah.
I mean,
And I think this is a statement about like the 50s man and the end of the 60s too. Like everything seemed to be perfect. You had to keep it all together. If you drank, you weren't an alcoholic. If you had a troubled marriage, no one knew that you beat your wife. You know, like everyone thought you were an upstanding father. And now it's the tail end, and you start revealing from neighbor to neighbor, pool to pool, that his life is not what it was in the 50s.
Did you
It's
guys
the failure of the American dream too.
Oh yeah, that was in the but did you guys, here's a corny line. I'm a special human being, noble and splendid.
yeah.
Yeah.
Not all the lines were I will agree with you on that. Some of the lines were a little kind of amateurish
I
sounding.
think that was probably like Burt's choice. I mean, Burt Lancaster is charming, and you could do an impression of him. People have, and I think that is a compliment. Here's another saying, another line he said in the film that I want to turn into a saying. Ready? This is my wagon, man. Whenever anybody pisses me off, this is my wagon, man. Like when Abram's arguing with, this is my wagon, man. I want to do that.
We wanted to make a bunch of clips to open the show with, and this is my wagon, man.
Yeah, this is my wagon.
Here's to sugar on your strawberries.
That
would be good on a
good slogan.
That would be good on a soundboard too.
Yeah.
Right? That's a good slogan. This is my wagon, man. Like, just to see Burt Lancaster say man, it was like, wait, what? What do you do? This is my wagon, man.
Another thing,
you know what's great about the wagon thing? Here's the thing about the wagon thing, scene. It's interesting.
It's so fun to do.
He doesn't remember that his wife's left him, that he's lost his job. There's certain things, but he remembers that there's a place where his daughter kicked in the side of the wagon and he mended it with plywood. There's little details of his life that he remembers that are insignificant, but the big giant things that other people know, he's in complete denial about, which I think is a really interesting choice by the writer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. It was just, oh my
do you
God,
think it's
in the
possible for somebody to actually be like this without copious amounts of drugs and
I think it's
brain damage, like brain damage?
Either you're on copious amounts of pharma, or you just get off the pharma. You were, and then you're off, and then this could be you.
I've heard about.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, what was that Scorsese film? Was it Shutter Island?
Yeah, Shutter Island.
With Leonardo DiCaprio. It's kind of, I mean, it's not like that movie at all, but in the sense of he has a complete denial of a portion of his life is very similar.
I remember watching a documentary on Dino De Laurentiis, who produced Orca. And they were talking about and Conan the Destroyer and King Kong. And
shout out to Dino.
His daughter said that he had a rule: if a movie bombed, they just didn't talk about it. They just moved on to the next movie. They would never talk about any movie that didn't do well. It didn't happen.
That's a good tactic. God bless the Italians.
I mean, it's a classically male way of controlling a situation, but everybody around you knows that, dad lost his job, or dad drinks a little bit too much, or, he thinks his daughters adore him. And by the time, and you believe it too, until you get to the public pool and they're like, you find out the daughters are driving around town with boys, presumably acting, getting locked up, and he has the money to like pay their bail. So that
How? But so here's my question. Maybe this is intentionally like vague. How destitute am I supposed to believe this guy is? Like, where does he sleep at night? Like,
that's what I've always believed.
Exactly.
He came out of a sanitarium, and maybe they stopped paying his bills and they just let him out. I don't know.
And he just took his swimsuit and he just put his swimsuit on and left the rest of his clothes. At least
I think
show
it's
me
not supposed to
something.
make sense.
yeah.
I think that the whole film is not, and I applaud their choice. That is what I'm thinking, is that I don't think they thought that through. It's not supposed to be taken literally.
Oh, I can give you a good backstory for how he got there.
Okay,
He's been
please.
living. He's been living
We
in
can all give our
Brooklyn.
own.
He's been all right. So check this out. He's been living in Brooklyn, like fully aware of how messed up his life is. He's like with some other like older like guy with a sob story. They're like roommates, like the odd couple, and it's miserable. And like he lost his wife. His daughters don't respect him. He's been unemployed, but he's had like a little bit of money, you know, from whatever.
Saved.
He lost his house, all that stuff, and his life is basically shit, right? But he's going about his life, and he's still going to the clubs and going. He's still macking it to chicks, and he's still like a player, and he's doing all that stuff. But then he finds out that his ex-wife is actually getting remarried, and then he has like a complete psychic break, and that's when like everything flips, and he's like, I got to go back there and find my family and reconnect.
I gotta
with
go.
these people. And then he gets up. He takes the Metro North up to Croton on the Hudson or Yonkers or wherever the
Naked.
fuck he lives.
Naked.
Like basically he's just got a towel and a bathing suit on. Everybody's looking at him like he's fucking crazy, but whatever. And then he gets off the train and he just like takes a stroll like to the nearest neighbor that he knows that's close to the train station. And he's improvising. He doesn't even know what he's doing. He's on a mission to get back home, to the home that he remembers. And then like it just every experience he has when he's reconnecting with these people that he hasn't seen in 2 years, every one of those experiences just gets him deeper and deeper into this delusion that like it's really going to happen. He's really going to end up at his home and everything's going to be back the way that it was. That's what I think happened.
Wait, I
They say they
think I
haven't seen
got
him
a
in 2
few.
years.
What? Sorry?
Did they say that in the beginning, that they haven't
Yes.
seen him in 2 years?
Yes.
Okay.
It's about, there's a couple
You
of
say,
times.
where have you been all this time? And
Yeah.
he says, oh, around or something like
But
that.
there's a certain points where it's implied that it's like a year or two or something since they'd seen it. At least that's what I
Okay.
remember. I could completely be misremembering it because I've only seen this once.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Because he does use the word portaging. And I looked that up. And portaging is when you take a boat and you move it from body of water to body of water to body of water. Because the second house he goes to where he meets the blonde girl, one of the guys there is like, well, you're just hiking home. You're just going in swimming pools. You're just hiking home. And he's like, not hiking, portaging. And I'm like, what did he say? I had to rewind it and put on like the subtitles to see what he said. Portaging. So I wrote it down, looked it up. So he kind of thinks he's a boat going from place to place. Boats float. So he's just like floating on things, and the ground reality did probably crumble out. But here's a question. Who would you guys cast today as the Burt
I'm
Lancaster?
glad that you mentioned this. Okay. There's a couple people, I think.
A lot of
But
people
I
would be
can't
great.
say that many of them are American. I would cast trying to think.
Wait, hold on. Does the film have the same tone? You're just
It
recasting.
could change. It could change if you have the right star, like Burt, because this is like a vehicle. This isn't really a film. It's more like a vehicle.
I would want
Okay, I'll go
I would
first.
want someone who was like big at one time and is now like fallen,
Like Johnny Depp.
like Johnny Depp.
Johnny
like,
Depp is
Viggo
obvious.
Mortensen would be good now. Viggo Mortensen's about the right age.
You know,
I
who
would want
think?
somebody less good looking than Burt Lancaster. And I would want to, you know what just really jumps out at me is Willem Dafoe. I think Willem Dafoe would make a great leading man in this movie. It would change the movie slightly.
Okay,
But it would make it more like horror. It would make it more like a thriller type of vibe, because this movie kind of is a thriller. in a way. You're
Love
like,
it.
what the hell's going on?
And I would say if you cast in like another 10 years, like a Ryan Reynolds, it would become like a little bit of like like a horror comedy type, because he has that like.
It would, yeah. I would do.
Yeah, that
I
would work.
I would do Kevin Costner.
Yes, that would be good.
Yes, I always
Yes.
liked Kevin. He's kind of bland as an actor, I guess, but I love him. I think he's wonderful.
But don't you think you need somebody with more animated facial expressions than that?
That's true. But if you were going
Like
to
a Mel
change the
Gibson?
style,
Yeah,
like a Mel
Gibson could work.
Gibson, but I could see. But if Kevin directs it or something, I could see it be more like a Western thing. You know, more like one with nature. Because this film, as it is more with society. I mean, there's a little nature in there. When they were running on the horse obstacle course, man, I was like, what the fuck are you doing? Anyway, so wait, Seth, did you say
Dude, I grew up in the suburbs. Like, people would walk to the house that had horses all the time and do crazy shit with the horses. It was just something we did.
All right. Well, who would you recast?
I think Judy's thing from Johnny Depp. I think I'd like someone who has like a physical presence, like Viggo Mortensen or
Oh,
Yeah.
that would be
Viggo.
great.
I
Christian
think
Bale. would be great.
Ryan Gosling in another 15
Ryan
years
Gosling.
might be interesting.
Yeah. Well,
There are a lot
Ryan,
of
I think
different
he'd
interesting
gain weight.
choices. They would change the film though.
Of course.
It
Yeah.
would, yeah.
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 Nobody could. I think you can't. I don't think it's possible to recast something and have it not change the film fundamentally.
Yeah.
That's just kind of
Especially
the
this
nature of
film.
Yeah, especially in a film like this.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what else is cool about this movie? You see Burt Lancaster's ass for like 43 seconds.
Yeah,
Oh,
man.
that's right.
His ass, and he walks, but he
goes
walks
with the
their
nudist
ass.
couple.
To the nudist place.
They didn't cut away. They let him walk for like 30. So he
Well,
walked
there's
the
a reason
whole
for
way to
that.
the
Is
pool.
because they're talking about him like he's an ass at that moment. That he has nothing. You're
Yeah,
gonna flip your
absolutely.
hand at me like that when you make like these statements every week about like how like things are connected where obviously no one has thought about that, and this is obviously well thought out. Like the two of them are talking about how he has nothing at that scene. That's the point where they go,
Yeah, and Burt insists on buying the $1,000.
and then they
table.
scratch it out. And his swim at that point is great because he holds his like trunks.
Yeah, Sarah was saying that. Why is he holding his trunks like this? And he's doing like the side stroke.
He doesn't want it. Have you ever walked around in wet, like from
Yeah.
like you fucking get all raw? So he wants some dry.
It was also starting to get cold.
Yeah,
God, this movie.
because that's when they point out that the elm is dying. Yeah,
God,
tree.
I would actually like to see Dwayne the Rock Johnson in this and have it be like he fights some people. Like there's
No,
at least
okay,
one
so I want
fight.
to talk about it. My friend Dan Casper and I saw this movie, and we wanted to redo it about a guy who comes home and he's shell shocked, and he's a martial artist, and he's going to fight
Oh, Christ.
at every dojo until he makes it back to his home. He's going to fight his whole way home through every kung fu kun and dojo and Brazilian, and he's going to fight his whole way home. That I think they should remake that movie.
Yeah, and they should make it in such a way that like every dojo he visits, they're like, "Yo, chill out. What the fuck?" And he actually forces the fight to happen because
Yeah,
none
he
of these
forced
guys.
the fight to
Like, yo,
happen about shit
relax.
that nobody even remembers.
Yeah,
Like, you used to pick on me. You used to pick on me when I was a little kid.
yeah, that's a good one.
Relax,
Yeah.
relax.
He tries to find every bully on the way home that he can from his childhood.
I mean, that would be
Like
like
that.
a great episode if like it wasn't a stupid show of Cobra Kai. They could do a swimmer episode of Cobra Kai.
God, that's so stupid. Why did I force myself to watch every fucking episode of it?
So there's
I
also
like season 1.
let me give you some more trivia about this movie.
Wait, so
Kim
guys, we got to
Hunter-
start wrapping. We got to start
Okay,
wrapping up soon.
Kim Hunter, who was Stella in Streetcar and Zira in Planet of the Apes, is in
Best
this movie.
supporting actress 1951.
Yep, best supporting actress 1951. And the girl who she really didn't do much else, who played Julie, was a second choice because Elia Kazan's wife at the time, who had played the Marilyn Monroe part in After the Fall on Broadway and won the Tony, she was supposed to do it. And Kazan, who liked to manipulate his friends' careers a lot, said, "No, you can't do The Swimmer. I don't want you doing that movie." So I think her name was
Wait, who?
Donna Loden. Elia Kazan, one of Elia Kazan's wives, was supposed to be in that part.
Oh,
And
wow.
Kazan said, no, you can't do it.
Hmm.
So,
Interesting.
yeah. So,
Who's the next choice?
I think is it Judy?
I think it's
I
me.
believe it's Judy.
And then I think you have two, because we skipped you.
No, I screwed up. One of them was, I never published it. That's why. It was Donnie's bar
Oh.
mitzvah. Donnie's bar mitzvah. Because there were
Donnie.
so many problems with it.
Okay.
So yeah.
They didn't deserve us anyway.
Judy, what do you,
Ready for my
what do you
choice?
think? Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if you guys have seen this film. It's from 1988. It's like a drama comedy. It is made in part by Ireland, the UK, and England, starring, hold on, Daryl Hannah, Peter O'Toole, Steve Guttenberg, Beverly D'Angelo, Liam Neeson.
High Spirits,
High Spirits.
Wait,
directed by
the,
Neil Jordan and Steve
Yeah.
Guttenberg.
This is
Wait, is
a
this the one where he?
star-studded cast.
Wait, who's in
Yeah.
this?
What?
Steve Guttenberg, Daryl Hannah,
Jennifer Tilly, Peter O'Toole, Liam Neeson.
I've
That
never
whole
seen this
cast.
one. I'm mixing it up with the one where Peter O'Toole is the inventor, and he.
No, this one, he runs
Creator,
an Irish castle. It's his family castle. And I think they're going out and he basically decides to advertise it as a haunted castle. And he tries to set it up as it's haunted, and a bunch of American tourists come to stay, including a paranormal expert. And it's a little bit of it. So basically it was made for, I think, 15 or 16 million, and it grossed about 8.
Yep.
Daryl Hannah was nominated for a Razzie. It has a 27% rating on Rotten Tomatoes by critics, but like a 78 or an 80 for viewers.
really?
So it's basically like a steaming turd that's fun.
Yes, I think so. It came out in 88. I don't think I saw it when I was 8 years old, but I don't remember when I saw it, but I remember watching it a lot growing up at a certain period of time. So I'm going to say it was probably like my middle school. And it was probably for me because it's a little bit like dark, and there's like a little bit of murder, and there's like a little bit of sex, you know, Jennifer Tilly's in it, and there's like a scene with her and the priest. And so it was like sort of like devious enough that my mom would let me watch this movie. I'm curious to see. I watched a little bit of it the other night, and I don't know, it's just fun. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Monty Python-ish to it.
Yeah.
Who else? And it's
So
just got like a
wacky.
great cast. They're so young. It's fun.
I'm excited for
You-
this one.
This is, yeah, and it was the same year as Beetlejuice, so I guess this was in the
Really?
ether back then. Like
Yeah.
I
like
guess
Halloween.
haunted house
decoration.
comedies were like
Yes.
going across.
I love all these
people's heads.
80s movies that you guys pick, because like I haven't seen like hardly any movies from this time period.
Before
Yeah.
we go, I wanted to do this, but because I forgot, I just want Abram, tell us what's wrong with Burt Lancaster's body from a physical.
Oh, I know.
standpoint.
Go ahead.
It's his right kidney.
His kidney?
He has
Okay.
a scar on his right kidney.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I noticed that too. I see what you're saying.
Oh,
Yeah,
Is
he
that
has
not
he
what
has
you-
a scar. Well, I mean, you know,
I thought that's what Seth Michael was referring to. Seth, that wasn't
No,
what
I'm
you were
talking from a physical.
Yeah.
from like a
based off of what
movement,
Abram
body
does.
language
Oh.
standpoint. Like,
Sorry. Sorry. Okay.
you know, he looks like a guy was pretty genetically gifted, had like a natural athletic body, and probably, you know, got it beaten up quite a bit. And from the time that he was like in his 20s to then, like he probably fell off a few horses in the early part of his career. You know, the limp is just like, yeah, I mean, I think he's clearly an injured man who wasn't able to figure out how to fix his injuries, because most people back then, nobody really understood how to do that back then. You know, they just take drugs and get massages and whatever. I mean, the guy just looks like an athlete, he looks like an older retired athlete who's gotten a lot of wear and tear on his body, but he knows how to fake it. I mean, this is more based off of like just what you said, Seth, you know, about how that was his natural limp. I didn't know that. You know, I'm not like some kind of some kind of genius cold, you know, reading type of guy when it comes to people's posture and biomechanics, especially with actors. It's really hard because they're faking a lot of stuff and they're putting on a lot of it is like a lot of the way that actors move is artificial. That's like not their natural gait. And I would have no way of knowing that. I mean, not really. I have the only way I can really analyze people's gait is like when I see them walking down the street, like the way that they would normally walk to go places. And that's not how he was moving, you know, because he's an actor. So, but yeah, you know, he definitely looked like he's a bit jacked up, but all things considered, I mean, you know, he had a pretty decent, like his scapula looked pretty healthy compared to like most people his age. I don't know, man. I don't know. It's hard to tell. Maybe in other movies
he was an acrobat in this circus.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, people who do that kind of like that's the kind of body he has. He has the body of a guy who had the natural gifts to be able to get into things like acrobatics, but then those types of activities degenerate your body. Like ballet dancers and acrobats have some of the most fucked up joints, and gymnasts, acrobats and gymnasts are kind of the same thing, but like gymnasts, acrobats, and like ballet dancers are completely messed up. So, you know, and they usually like last longer than other people just because they had the natural gifts to begin with. But I've never seen an acrobat in their 50s who isn't dealing with some kind of like serious problems. Yeah, I don't know. Joints can't really take that kind of pounding for that long. Like, you know, like our bodies didn't evolve to be able to like balance on our shoulders and do, like that's not natural. And, you know, people can do it, but it's always causes problems. So yeah, if you're telling me he was an acrobat, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
But anyway, all right, cool. Looking forward to High Spirits.
Look at Judy; she's so proud of her choice.
Yeah, no, and this is the first like non-thriller. Like this is the first genre like film of this genre that you picked, right? Like you've mostly done like horror and thrillers.
I've done horror. I mean, yeah, I guess Bloody Mary wasn't really a comedy.
Zombies.
I don't think I've picked a comedy yet. No, I mean I loved Clue, but yeah, usually I pick like dark, weird stuff. I don't know. I feel like my choices are always like really weird and not as good as yours, but
I disagree.
I don't care.
I think
guys, I saw a trailer for a Chuck Norris movie from 1985.
Yeah.
Get ready. And I'll tell you this, I was so mad at seeing this movie. I told Sarah that I was going to make Seth Michael watch Tron Legacy. That's how mad I was.
That's not an obscure movie, dude.